On this video, I would like to introduce the Greek alphabet by slowly pronouncing every letter and then going to John 1, 1 to 5, and looking at each letter and, uh, and basically, again, reading it slowly and doing a little bit of grammar. This is mainly a really, can I say, a study for beginners who are beginning to learn Greek. So the alphabet goes from alpha to omega. If you will get a chart, actually you can find it on a work that I have done on the Hebrew Christological Greek grammar. It's found on YouTube. And also, you can find it on Google Books under my name, Dr. Gary Stats. And then I'm sure there are many places on YouTube where the alphabet can be explained. But let me just go through this. First of all, we have alpha. Looks like an A, alpha. Next, beta, beta. It looks like a B if you're going to transliterate it. Next, gamma, gamma, and it's transliterated as a G. Next, delta, delta, and we transliterate that as a D. Next, epsilon, epsilon, and it looks like an E, and you transliterate it as an E. Next, zeta, zeta. This is transliterated as a Z. Next, eta, eta. This is again transliterated as an E, a long E, eta. Next is theta, theta, and we transliterate that with a TH. Next is iota, iota, and we transliterate that with a Y. Next letter is kappa, kappa, and we transliterate that with a K. Next is lambda, lambda, and we transliterate that with an L. Next is mu, sort of like a cow mooing, moo, and we transliterate that with an M. Next is nu, nu, and we transliterate that with an N. Next is xi, xi. We transliterate that with an X, sort of like a K, xi, like a KS kind of sound, xi. Next is omicron, omicron, transliterated as O. Next is P. Excuse me, please. Next is P. Some pronounce it pi. Transliterate that as a P. Next is rho, and we transliterate that as an R, a rho. Next is sigma, sigma. It's transliterated as an S. Next is tau, tau, and we transliterate that with as a T. Next is upsilon, upsilon, and we transliterate that with a U. Next is phi, and we transliterate that with a PH, phi. Next is key, key, and we transliterate that with a CH. Next is psi, 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 and we transliterate that with a PS. And finally, we have omega, omega, and that is transliterated with a long O. So I would encourage a beginner learning Greek to master the alphabet. Put these letters on, let's say, vocabulary cards or 3x5 cards, cut them in half, and put an alpha on the one hand, the A, and then on the other side, write alpha. Or put the letter beta, and on the other side of the card, write out beta and how it's transliterated. Alpha is ALPHA, alpha. Beta is BETA. Gamma is GAMMA. Delta is DELTA. Epsilon is EPSILON. Zeta is ZETA. Eta, it's like an A, like a long kind of an E sound, A or A sound. Eta, ETA. Theta, THETA. Iota, IOTA. Kappa, KAPPA. Kappa. Lambda, LAMBDA. Lambda. Mu, MU. Nu, NU. Xi, and we can make that like with an X and an I and a C, sort of like a KS sound. Next, Omicron, OMICRON. And then next is P, which would be PI or pi, depending on how someone wants to pronounce it. Next is Rho, RHO, Rho. Next is Sigma, SIGMA. Next is Tau, TAU. And then we have Upsilon, UPSILON. And then we have Phi, PHI. And then Chi would be CHI. Psi would be PSI. And Omega, OMEGA. And what I would encourage students to do in learning this is to master the alphabet. That is the first step of really reading Hebrew, to know and master the alphabet. What I would like to do now is to go to John 1:1 and read it slowly in Greek and talk about the letters and the translation. So we read it epsilon nu, which would be in, arche, alpha, rho, chi, eta, in the beginning. And notice under the arche, you have a little iota. They call it a iota subscript written underneath. And it means in the beginning. And in Greek, you have different cases. You have nominative, which is your subject, genitive, which is your object, like the book of John. You have dative, which is your direct object. He gave the book to John. Then you have the direct object, like he read the book. The book would be the direct object of he read. And then you have vocative. If you wanted to say, oh, John, or John, sort of calling attention to, let's say, John. John, that would be like vocative. So you have those different cases, and they all have different endings. You have feminine nouns, you have masculine nouns, and neuter nouns. And this is a feminine noun, arche, and it's in the dative case. And you can tell that by the eta, which makes it feminine, and then the little iota subscript underneath, which makes it dative. And in is a preposition that takes the dative. So in arche would be in the beginning. Then notice we have an eta and a nu. Eta, nu. And we would pronounce that ain. So in arche, ain. And now notice you have what is called a circumflex accent over the eta. And you also have it over the eta in arche. And that gives it sort of a longer sound, a. And then you have that little comma to the left of in, and a comma above the alpha in arche, a little comma sign. That's called a soft breathing mark. So in arche, ain. Now notice, again, we have eta, nu. We have the circumflex accent, and we have basically, it's not a rough accent, but we have a soft pronunciation. It'd be the opposite of cha, which is the next word. So by the way, ain is a verb. And when we look at Greek, we have in your verbs, we have first person, second person, third person. First person would be I am. Second person would be you are. Third person would be he, she, or it is. Now, the verb here, eta nu, is what we call an imperfect. In Greek, you have a present tense, and you have an imperfect tense, and you have other tenses. But right now, we want to simplify it as much as possible. This is an imperfect tense. It means it shows continuous action in past time. So in the beginning was ain. Then we have cha lagos. You could pronounce that with me. Cha lagos. Notice we have the omicron, and we have a rough breathing mark under cha. Cha is the definite article, the. So in the beginning was cha, the. Then we have lagos. Notice lambda, omicron, gamma, omicron, and sigma. And that's what we call a final sigma. When sigma appears in the word, within a word, it will be written like what we learned in the alphabet. When it comes at the end of a word, it's like that S sign. So in the beginning was the word, lambda, omicron, gamma, omicron, sigma. And by the way, the word goes back to Genesis chapter 1, where God said, Vayomer, we see his word from the very beginning. It's also interesting that when we look at what is called Targum, Targum. Targum is the Aramaic translation of the Hebrew Bible. And these were, can I say, translations that were made after the Israelites came back from Babylon. And in the synagogue, when the Bible was read, or the Torah in Hebrew, there would be an interpreter who would put it into Aramaic. And these were called Targumim, Targumim. And so there's different Targumim. And in Genesis, you have Targum Onkelos, Onkelos, Onkelos. And it's a translation, an Aramaic translation of the Hebrew. And it's sort of interesting when you read it, it'll read like this. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And I'm giving an example. And the word said, and the word in Aramaic is memra, M-E-M-R-A, memra, meaning word. And so it's my own feeling that John goes back to the Aramaic background in the Targum as a Jewish writer. And I think it's unmistakably clear then that John is speaking of Jesus, who is the Word here. We know that because in verse 14, the Word became flesh. So basically, I believe he's referring back to the Jewish Targum. Some scholars want to apply it to the Greek world, where logos has to do like with reason and something abstract. But while there could be some allusion to that, I think John is referring to the Memra, and I think the Jewish readers would have picked that up. So in the beginning was ha logos, the word. Now notice in Greek, you have feminine nouns and you have masculine nouns. Feminine nouns are in what is called first declension. Declension is what falls out as you decline, as you go down, and spell out the different cases. And so, for example, arche, if we're looking at how to decline it, would be the nominative. Arches would be the genitive. Arche, like we have here, would be the dative. Arcane would be the accusative, and so forth. Well, the article ha is nominative. And one of the things I've always told students, try to learn the article, because it'll give you all the different cases. Just to go through it once. Ha is nominative, tu is genitive, to is dative, ton is accusative. In the plural, hoi is the nominative plural, if you wanted to say the word, hoi lagoi. And if you wanted to say of the words, ton lagon. Tone is accusative or is genitive plural. Toys is dative plural. He spoke. He spoke the Bible for words or with words, and then you have the accusative, that is, he spoke the words, and that would be tous logos. If we were going to look at logos, it would be ha logos is your subject or your nominative. Tu lagu, lagu is your genitive with the ou, tou. To lago would be your dative. To the word, showing indirect object, and then we would have tan lagon would be your direct object. He spoke the word. And then the words, hoi lagoi, hoi is your plural in your article, the words. Ton lagon would be of the words. The words were, let's say, very nicely read. Ton lagon would be of the words. he spoke of the words. And tois, logos, T-O-I-S, logos would be to or for the words. And tous, logos, would be the words. That is, he spoke the words. So these are what we call cases. Nominative, subject. Genitive would be the case of possession. The book of John. Dative would be indirect object. He spoke to uh, he spoke to John the words. The words would be the direct object, but to John would be indirect, and that would be dative. And then accusative would be he spoke words. It would be the direct object of the verb. So in Greek, and in my grammar, I point this out. In Greek, we need to learn the case endings. And I would start with ha, tu, to, ton, hoi in the plural, ton, tois, tus. That would be nominative, genitive, dative, accusative. And you can see in my grammar notes on Google Books where I discuss that. Then let's go to the next phrase. The first one is showing the eternality of Jesus. The second phrase, kai ha lagos, ein pros ton theon. And I would encourage you to transliterate the words, that is, put the English equivalent of the Greek letters, and then try to read it, imitate what I'm doing. Notice chi is the kappa, alpha, iota, and you have a little accent mark going this way on the iota, which is called the acute accent. And again, it's in what we call on the ultimate or last vowel. And here it just simply means and. It's a conjunction. So en ha lagos. We come back to the subject again. Ha is the definite article, and notice it's nominative. It's the omicron with the rough breathing mark, ha. And then lagos is lambda, omicron, gamma, omicron, and final sigma. And the word. Again, the definite article, ha, and lagos is a noun. And notice it's a masculine noun. It ends with os. Your masculine nouns end with an omicron sigma, whereas your feminine nouns end with an eta or an alpha. So the word was. And notice ein is eta nu, and we have that what we call circumflex accent, what gives it ein, sort of a ein, like that kind of a read. And notice it has a smooth breathing mark. So, and the word was ein, pros ton theon. Notice plus is a P, a rho, an omicron, and a final sigma. And the word was literally toward God. And I think it would be fair, this is what we call a preposition, like in. That means it stands before the noun here, which is ton, theon. And pros, prepositions take different cases. Pros takes the accusative case here. Remember, we saw nominative, genitive, dative, accusative. Nominative is subject. Genitive is possession, the book of John. Dative is, remember, indirect object. He gave the book to John. And finally, accusative is direct object. He read the book. So pros takes the direct object or the accusative case. And notice ton is a tau, an omicron, and a nu. And that tau, if you were going to spell it out, would be a T-O-N. And that means the. And notice it is the definite article. Ha, tu, to, ton. It's the definite article, and it's in what we call the accusative case. That's why learning the article is essential, because it gives away the case ending. So the word was face to face, or toward the God, but we would translate it toward God. And notice we have that acute accent again under ton, and we have it also under theon, that little, let's say, line or short mark above the omicron. So the word was face to face with God. And notice theon is theta, eta, theta, epsilon, omicron, nu. And theos means God. And that on ending puts it into the accusative case or the direct object. And pros takes that direct object. So, and the word, which is nominative, was, which is the verb imperfect, showing continuous existence in past time. And it goes back to the verb to be, eimi. And when you come to the imperfect and you look at how it falls out, it would be amen, ace, ain. That is, I was, you was, he was. And so this is what we have here, a third person singular from eimi. And the word was face to face with God. So we learn two things about Jesus. He is eternal, pre-existent. He always was. And secondly, he was always face to face with God the Father. That's why Jesus would say in John 17, restore to me the glory, Father, that I had with you from the beginning. And then we come to the third clause, kai theos ein cha logos. And the word was God. Notice chi is kappa, alpha, iota, with the accent over the iota. Then we have theos, theta, epsilon, omicron, and final sigma. And theos means God. And notice the os ending shows that it's nominative. Kai theos. Ain, here we have that verb again, the imperfect, third masculine singular from the verb eimi. When you parse it, when you identify a verb, it's called parsing, P-A-R-S-I-N-G. And you identify what tense it is, what person it is, and then you go back to the present tense, which here the verb to be is eimi, epsilon, iota, mu, iota, eimi. And that you look up in a dictionary. And so this you learn over time by reading. What let's say, whether you're looking at an imperfect or present. And there's other can I say, other different, what we would call a time in Greek, are different ways. We have our tenses, that's the word I'm looking for. We have present, we have imperfect, we have aorist, which is like pointed action. He, let's say, spoke instead of he was speaking, which would be imperfect. And he is speaking would be present. He spoke would be completed action for the most part, looking at the past, what he did. And then he will speak is the future tense. He will speak. And that tense has a different, can I say, it has a sigma, the way it's written. And we'll get into that later. And then you have what is called a perfect tense, he has spoken, and a pluperfect, he had spoken. But this is imperfect. So, and the word was God. Notice ha again is your definite article with the rough breathing mark, which is the omicron. And logos is the lambda, omicron, gamma, omicron, and final sigma. And you have that accent over the omega called the acute accent. So if we were going to transliterate, it would be ENARCH long E sound, or long E sign. NOLOGOSKAIOLOGOS, long E sound with the N, ain, and then PROSTON, and then THEON, theon, and then KAINTHEOS, theos, long E with an N, that would be AN, or ain, and then OLOGOS, ha, logos. So what you might do once you learn the different letters of the alphabet is transliterate it with the Greek. That is, take it and put it into what would be transliterated equivalents in using the English alphabet. So that would be a way to begin mastering Greek. And let me say one other thing. When you look at verse 1, you need to learn vocabulary. And in is a preposition. It takes the dative. It's in. Arche is a noun. It means beginning. And it's a feminine noun. Ami, epsilon, iota, mu, iota, is a verb, and it means to be. Ha is the definite article the. Logos is the noun, and it's masculine, and it means word. And kai is a conjunction. It's conjoining a phrase with another phrase, and that means and. Pras is a preposition that stands before a noun preposition, and basically it means to or toward, and it takes the accusative case. And theos is a noun for God. By the way, this is where we get theology. And so what I would do now is transliterate it. First of all, learn the alphabet, put it on 3x5 cards, try to master it, then transliterate it and try to read it then. And I'll read it slowly. Enarche ein halagas. Kai halagas ein prastan theon. Kai theos ein halagas. And then you translate it. In the beginning was eternally existing the Word. So Jesus is eternal, pre-existent and eternal. And the Word was toward God. And we could translate this face to face then with God. Jesus was eternally existent and face to face, co-equal with God the Father. And here we see the glory that Jesus shared with the Father, being face to face with him from all eternity. And then the third clause, the Word was divine, or the Word was God. I want to make one point here. Some would argue and say, or try to say, that there's no article before theos. And so we would translate it, the Word was a God, which is not proper grammar. What the text is saying and what Greek is saying here is the Word was divine. You have two nominatives with the os ending, and theos and logos, and you have it with the verb to be between the two nouns. And when you have a construction like that, the noun without the article should never be translated a God or a something. It's looking at the quality of what halagos is. That is, the word was fully divine, was fully God, hence eternal. He's already said that Jesus is eternal, that he was always face to face with God the Father, and the Word was divine. It's interesting. Uh, there is a text in First John, which is interesting, where you have God is love. And when you read that text, God is love. Love is without the article, and you have the to be verb and the two nouns, God and love, separated by the to be verb, to be. And we would never translate that God is a love, but simply God is love. And so God has that quality of love that is what First John is saying. And this is important to understand the Greek grammar and what is going on here. And so as we read that third clause, we need to read it. That is, the word was God, or the word was divine, which shows that Jesus is eternal. He's always been face to face with God, and he is fully divine. That is, he is fully God. And John will develop this further when he says in John 8, before Abraham was, I am, ego eimi, which, by the way, going back to Exodus 3, is what the Hebrew has said, who do I tell them has sent me? When Moses asked, the Lord said, tell them, Eyeh, Asher, Eyeh, I am that which I am. They took up stones to kill him at that point because he was claiming the very title that only God could have. So John is clearly showing us that Jesus Christ is fully God, co-eternal with God the Father. And one other thing that is interesting here, you have the three aims, was, the word was in the beginning, showing the eternality of Jesus. Secondly, the word was face to face with God, showing his distinct, can I say, identity? That is, a distinct person within the Holy Trinity. And the word was fully divine, or God. And it's interesting when you look at John 1, especially 1 to 14, you have another verb that appears, and that is ginomai, to become. And you have your three imperfects, and you have three ginomais. You have it in verse 3. All things came to be through him. And here we have agenata. By the way, this is, we'll get into the grammar later, but this is an aorist tense, what we call an aorist middle. So all things came to be from genomai, through him. Whereas he, ein, he's eternal. He in the beginning always was. That's the first contrast that John draws. The second contrast between the second ein and the second ginomai is in verse 6. The word was ein, face to face, the word was face to face with God. We're in verse 6, agenata anthropos. there came to be a man. So Jesus was always face to face with God. But there came to be a man, John, who was sent from God, but never face to face with God from all eternity, where Jesus was. And then the third contrast is the Word was divine. And that what we call that again is two nominatives. The one is predicate nominative. That is, theos is predicate. It's predicating something about halagos, about the word. What is it predicating? That is, what is it saying about the word? The word was God. The word was fully divine. It's called a predicate nominative. Again, when you have two nouns, the one without the article, the one with the article, it's predicating something about the subject of the clause. That is the first noun. The word was fully divine, or was God. Just like God is love. And that, again, the love there is predicating something about God, who is the subject of that phrase. So having said that, the third agenata then is in verse 14. And that is, the word was divine, ain. But here we have, and the word sarx, flesh, agenata. The word became flesh. And Jesus, who was fully divine, fully God, was willing to become sarx, to become flesh, and pitch his tent among us, we're told in verse 14. And John said, we gazed upon his glory. Glory that is full of grace and truth. And these are attributes of God himself. We see it, for example, in Psalm 117. So at any rate, the three aims should, I think, in John's development here, should be read in contrast to the three becoming, the three agenetas, which means to become. All things had a beginning. Jesus didn't. Jesus is eternal. He always was. Secondly, John had a beginning, having sent from God, but never face to face with God eternally, where Jesus' aim was. And thirdly, the Word was fully divine, full deity. And so the Word became flesh, and who was full deity was willing to become flesh. And this is where we have the God-man, the perfect God-man. He became flesh and experienced all the weaknesses of being tired, of things that we humans go through, but without sin. Because the Bible says he who knew no sin became a sin offering for us. So John is teaching some great theology just in this one verse. The eternality of Jesus, the his separate personhood with the Father, and thirdly, that he is fully divine in that predicate nominative. The Word was God, fully divine. And then, as we said, the three contrasts in the agenata of all things, of John, and of Jesus becoming flesh, yet without sin, as the perfect God-man to become that great sacrifice for us. So I hope this helps. I would say go back and read verse 1 over and over. Learn the alphabet, transliterate the verse into English equivalent, and then, having done that, try to read it. And as you read it, eventually try to memorize it. Enarche ein halagas, kai halagas ein prastantaan, kai thaas ein halagas. Thank you. I hope this helps. We're trying to make it for very beginners that are just starting in Greek.